The summer heat rolled over the fields of rural Tennessee like a thick wool blanket, pressing down on every living thing in its path. In the small town of Willow Creek, where tractors outnumbered traffic lights, an old mechanic's shop stood at the edge of a winding country road. It was a patchwork building, half rusted metal, half rotting wood, with hand-painted signs and oil stains on the gravel driveway. It wasn't much, but for 8-year-old Emily Ray, it was everything. Emily was not your typical little girl. While others played house or dressed dolls, Emily was busy rebuilding the engine of a busted chainsaw or helping her grandpa align the rotors on a pickup truck. Her fingers were often stained with grease, and her wild blonde hair was usually tied back in a messy braid. She was quick with her hands, and quicker with her mind, an old soul with the instincts of a born mechanic. That day, as the cicadas hummed and her grandfather napped in the shade, Emily was working on a busted lawnmower when she heard the unfamiliar sound of a luxury engine sputtering. It coughed, gasped, then died just a few feet from the edge of the shop's driveway. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and looked up to see a sleek black Bentley coasting to a silent stop. The sight of it alone turned heads. Nobody in Willow Creek drove anything that shiny unless they were lost. Out of the driver's side stepped a tall man in a crisp gray suit, clearly out of place among the dust and gravel. His polished shoes crunched against the rocks as he slammed the door shut, frustration visible in every step. His name was Malcolm Grant, a self-made tech millionaire from New York. He had come to Tennessee for a quiet land deal, hoping to buy property for a private innovation retreat. What he hadn't counted on was the back roads frying his car's radiator. He opened the hood, then his phone. No bars, not a single one. "Of course," he muttered, pacing. "Of course, no reception out here." From around the side of the shop, Emily appeared like a ghost in the heat wave. She was barefoot, wiping her hands with an oily rag, squinting at the steaming Bentley with mild curiosity. "Looks like she overheated," she said casually. Malcolm glanced over, startled. Yeah. You wouldn't happen to have a phone I could use?" "Nope," she replied. "But I got tools. Want me to take a look?" He looked her up and down, the oversized denim overalls, the dirty hands, the childlike innocence, and smiled politely. "I appreciate the offer, but I think this might be a little over your head." Behind him, a couple of locals from the diner across the street shouted, "Let her try. That little girl fixed my combine last week." Malcolm raised a skeptical eyebrow but stepped aside. "Be my guest." Emily climbed onto a stool, peered under the hood, and frowned. "Yeah, your radiator cap's cracked. Hose is loose too. You pushed it too far." Malcolm blinked. "You're sure?" She didn't respond. Instead, she disappeared into the shop, rummaged through a drawer, and came back with duct tape, a hose clamp, and a pair of pliers. With a focus far beyond her years, she tightened connections, patched the crack, and refilled the coolant from a jug her grandpa kept in the fridge next to the iced tea. 10 minutes later, she looked up and said, "Try it now." Malcolm hesitated, turned the key, and the Bentley roared to life like nothing had ever gone wrong. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone watching, including Malcolm, was stunned. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered, stepping out. How did you know how to do that?" She gave a half smile. "My grandpa says engines talk. You just gotta listen." Malcolm knelt down, suddenly seeing not just a dirty kid, but something far more rare, a mind built for brilliance. "What's your name?" "Emily." "Emily," he repeated. "How would you like a chance to build something bigger than lawnmowers?" She tilted her head. "You mean like cars?" "No, I mean like robots, satellites, anything you want." She stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Completely." And just like that, a girl who had never left her small town was handed the keys to a future she hadn't even dared to imagine. Emily sat in the back seat of the Bentley, her fingers nervously gripping the seatbelt as the trees of Tennessee blurred into buildings and highways. She had never been farther than the county fair. Now she was headed to New York City, escorted by Malcolm Grant himself. Her grandfather had given his blessing, shaking Malcolm's hand with pride and a few tears. "You take care of my girl," he said. "She's got magic in her hands." The city was unlike anything Emily had imagined. The noise, the lights, the sheer number of people, it overwhelmed her. But Malcolm had made arrangements. She would stay in a guest house on his estate in Westchester, just outside the city. It was safe, quiet, and came with its own garage, which Malcolm had filled with tools and equipment most engineers only dreamed of. "You'll have private tutors," he explained. "Experts in math, physics, robotics, anything you want to learn, we'll bring it to you." At first, Emily was shy. The lessons were hard. The tutors spoke in long words she didn't always understand. But slowly, with determination and that same hands-on grit she'd shown back in Tennessee, where Emily began to thrive. By the time she was 10, she could build a drone from scratch. By 12, she was designing custom engine components Malcolm's own engineers asked to use. Word spread about the quiet genius he had discovered, but Malcolm never took credit. He simply watched, proud and amazed, as the little girl with grease-stained hands became a prodigy. One afternoon, while working on a prototype for a new self-cooling engine, Emily glanced at Malcolm with a frown. "Why me?" she asked. He smiled. "Because I've worked with hundreds of smart people, but you see the world differently. You fix things not just with logic, but with instinct. That can't be taught." As the years passed, Emily's bond with Malcolm grew deeper. He became the father she never had, she the daughter he never expected. She would spend hours in his office, learning not just science but leadership, how to think big, how to lead teams, how to stay grounded. But not everyone was thrilled with her presence. Inside Malcolm's company, some senior engineers and board members whispered. "She's just a charity case," one said. "He's grooming a child to run a billion-dollar tech firm," scoffed another. They doubted her until she proved them wrong. At 16, she presented her first full innovation, a solar-charged mini-engine that could run for days without overheating. It was lean, efficient, and cheap to produce. Malcolm's company filed the patent under her name. When the product launched, it sold out in weeks, breaking every sales record the company had set. At the press conference, reporters flooded the stage. "Who is this teenage inventor? Where did you find her?" Malcolm smiled as he took the mic. "She's not just our top engineer. She's the future of this company." The cameras turned toward her. Emily, in a modest blazer and jeans, looked out at the sea of flashing lights. "I'm just a girl from Tennessee," she said, "but I believe genius can be found anywhere. You just have to listen. Like engines, like people." Applause erupted. One reporter asked, "Do you think you'll stay here, work for Malcolm forever?" Before she could answer, Malcolm stepped forward and placed a leather folder in her hands. Inside was a contract, naming her Chief Innovation Officer and granting her equity in the company. "I'm not offering you a job," he said softly. "I'm offering you your legacy." Tears welled in her eyes. It was more than she'd ever dreamed. But Emily didn't forget where she came from. 2 months later, she returned to Willow Creek. Her Bentley, now her own, pulled into the same dusty driveway. Her grandpa, older but still smiling, walked out of the shop with disbelief in his eyes. "You did it," he whispered. She hugged him tightly. "We did it." Emily used part of her earnings to refurbish the town's schools, set up scholarships, and build a tech center where local kids could tinker, build, and dream. Every summer, she ran free workshops for girls who'd never held a wrench or built a circuit. She called it Fix Forward. Years passed. The girl who once patched a radiator with duct tape became one of the most respected minds in global engineering. And yet, no matter where she went, she carried a small, battered wrench in her backpack, the first tool she ever used on that Bentley engine. It reminded her of who she was, of where she came from, of the day everything changed because someone believed in her before the world did, and she never forgot to do the same for others.